I want to thank each one of you for coming and joining us on this press conference this morning. My name is Michelle Bachmann. I'm a member of Congress from Minnesota's 6th Congressional District. I want to thank you for being here today, and also I'd just like to frame this issue before I hand this over to Anita and Heather for them to be able to share their stories with you. This is about how Congress spends the people's money in our country, and it's about the bar that Congress sets for accessing federal funding. The question before us is it a right that anyone is entitled to, or is it a privilege that must be earned? Since 1994, ACORN has already received at least $53 million in tax money, and it was reported recently that ACORN could be eligible for up to another $8.5 billion between the so-called stimulus and the 2010 federal budget. And just last week, on the very same day that new criminal charges were filed against ACORN in Pennsylvania, the House approved last Thursday another bill that includes $140 million for foreclosure legal assistance grants. This is money that ACORN will be eligible to receive thanks to a nearly party-line vote on an amendment by Financial Services Chair Barney Frank. Only 4 Democrats in the House voted against Chairman Frank. All the while that Congress has been funneling tax money to ACORN, it has been linked to voter registration fraud and related violations of the law in more than a dozen states directly through its employees or both. ACORN, as you know, is no stranger to the spotlight. Yet, no matter how many times prosecutors investigate and even indict ACORN and their employees, they emerge unblemished as far as the federal government is concerned from having access to federal tax dollars. First of all, I'd like to introduce two women who've been very brave in their fight against ACORN. One is Anita Moncrief. She has worked very hard to ensure that the truth about ACORN's fraudulent behavior is exposed. She is a whistleblower for ACORN, and she's a former ACORN employee. She testified recently before the Pennsylvania State Court regarding the illegal behavior that she witnessed while working with ACORN. Anita?
Thank you. In 2005, I came to work for ACORN Political Operations. I worked at the same time with Project Vote, its affiliate. While I was there, some of the things that I noticed started to disturb me. Among them was the first thing that I did was research voter registration fraud allegations in Ohio and Minnesota, Missouri, other states. And as I started to research them, I noticed a pattern. The pattern was that among the things that was happening is that the employees were being thrown under the bus. What this means is that the employees were being trained to tell people, never ask, are you registered to vote? So instead of asking a very crucial question, they would say, what is your last name? Fill out these forms and give them to the people to sign. This created thousands and thousands of duplicates that were sent to these election offices, causing chaos among the officials that had to go through them and figure out which ones were fraudulent. So these employees were being taken away from their family, their children, and put in jail based on things that ACORN had taught them to do. ACORN is an organization made up of African Americans, but sadly its senior staff is all white. And I don't understand how you can say that you're representing the people when none of your staff represent the communities that you're working in. ACORN has always used the poor they've stood on the backs of the poor in order to make money for their organization. It has never been about helping these people. If you look at the state of Washington, D.C., after 30 years of ACORN, I can't say that it's been an improvement. It's actually getting worse. One of the things I want people to realize is that it's not just voter registration fraud. People need to realize that not only are they committing this stuff on a national scale, but they are also keeping people poor and marginalized and separated from society for their own purposes. I hope people will realize that Representative Bachmann actually stood up, where me as a Democrat, I don't have any representatives out there that are willing to stand up to ACORN, and it really disappoints me. I hope that they will follow her lead and realize that corruption, funding corruption is not the way to go. That is not why I sent my representatives to Washington. Thank you.
Also with us today is the attorney handling Anita Moncrief's case, Heather Heidelbaugh. Heather is also currently involved in a case against ACORN, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and she recently testified before the House Judiciary Subcommittee on the Constitutional Civil Rights and Civil Liberties to call for a formal investigation into ACORN. Heather?
Thank you, Congresswoman. Good morning. My name is Heather Heidelbaugh. I'm an attorney I'm also the Vice President of the Republican National Lawyers Association. I filed a lawsuit in Pennsylvania. I represented a voter, a candidate, and the Republican State Committee. I filed that lawsuit on October 17th. On October 21st, I received a call from a woman I did not know, and her name is Anita Moncrief. She told me she had been a confidential informant to the New York Times for several months and had been giving the New York Times information about ACORN. And I looked that up, and in fact, the New York Times had been printing serial stories about ACORN. She indicated that the New York Times had stopped the stories and was going to stop the investigation, and she wanted to put herself under oath, under the penalty of perjury, to get the story out, and I was the only case in the country that was proceeding. That was an extraordinary comment from a young woman. She wanted to put herself under oath, subject herself to criminal perjury charges, hoping that the press would be there and would get the true story out about ACORN because the New York Times had failed her. I found this woman and the facts in this case to be extraordinary. The case ended actually on October 31st in that the judge found that I had filed the injunction against the Secretary of the Commonwealth as well as ACORN. The judge found that he thought the Secretary of the Commonwealth could conduct a fair election, but he allowed me to proceed against ACORN. The parties then convened and decided that they would dismiss the case at that point because the election had proceeded without prejudice to refile at a later time. I do not represent Ms. Moncrief. I am not her lawyer. She is a witness in a case that I had, and I learned an enormous amount about ACORN in that case. As a citizen, as a lawyer, as the Vice President of the Republican National Lawyers Association, I have continued to speak out about what I learned in that case. Further, I have developed a friendship with Ms. Moncrief, and she's continued to advise me in regard to the things that she finds disturbing about ACORN. I've also come to know Marcelle Reed, who's a member of the ACORN 8. Marcelle Reed wanted to be here today. She wanted to join the press conference and stand with Ms. Bachmann, but she's had a very long-standing doctor's appointment, and as we all know, we can't cancel those doctor's appointments. They take 6 months to get. But I have a statement from her that I would like to read. We, the undersigned members of the ACORN 8 National Board, made up of current and former ACORN leaders, all of which believe in the original stated mission of ACORN to help empower poor and moderate income members of society. We call for an immediate suspension of all federal, state, and local funding until an independent audit and congressional hearing of ACORN and its entities has been completed. And it is signed by Marcelle Reed, the national chair, and a number of members of the DC ACORN. I was invited to appear in front of Congress on March 19th.